get a few things set up here, and going to get purple suede on in 1 second. So just give me a moment. Coming to you from my old studio here. Pretty busy in here right now, but we've managed to make some space. Let me just see how you get purple in here now. Where is he? Okay, here he is. Okay, right, we can see you now, man.
Hey, what's up, man?
Hey, okay, you can hear me okay?
Yes, sir, loud and clear.
Oh, good. Good to see you again. Yeah, it's been quite a while since we last spoke.
It has been. I was looking back at our chats, and at least since like 22 or something like that.
Yeah, it was back at the very early days of Stacks, wasn't it? When we first sort of met.
Yeah, good times back then, man. I was gonna definitely lean on that a little bit because it all ties into Trio. I was working with Bruff back then, you know, getting to know all the Stacks homies, and now we're all in Ordinals, so it's really cool that we're all kind of joined together.
We had prime viewing when Ordinals all started, didn't we? We were all kind of already in the room, effectively. Everyone who was on
we were kind of all waiting. Yeah, everyone was ready, for sure.
I was unsure, to be fair.
Real quick, I'm looking at the stream on Twitter, and I can see maybe like a 1/4 inch of your face and all of my face. So I don't know if you want to drag yourself over some, or
try and move myself over a bit. There we go.
I don't want to be the superstar of the Ordinal show.
I can also fade in the animation. I'm usually doing these on my own, and I don't use the camera. But because we've got such a special guest here today, I figured we should.
Dude, I appreciate it. I mean, hey, we can always do just audio if you like, whatever. I'm easy.
Yeah, it's all good. So yeah, so tell us about what's been going on now then with Trio.
Yeah, man. So I guess for a little bit of background about myself, since this is my first time on the show, but I got my start in Bitcoin way back in the day, but I got my start in crypto really when I started working with Cointelegraph back in 2020 area. They were doing marketing for hire back then, and I was employee number 6, I believe. And it's back then where I started getting into Stacks and starting to get to know you. Funnily enough, I've been working a lot with the artists recently, again in Ordinals, and I was looking back at our original chats, and they started about the same time because I know you guys are tight or have worked in that same ecosystem and stuff. But so Bruff and I got to know each other in Stacks. We worked in a startup there. And then as soon as Ordinals came out, like you were saying, we're kind of all positioned and ready to dive in. And so Bruff went and started Ordinals Bot, which turned into the marketplace Trio. And once it was all ready for a community guy, he brought me on board. And yeah, I mean, it's been crazy, man. We've been building from the ground up. We're trying to be a Bitcoin only, like for the artists, for the creator type people. Trio goes out of their way to make a lot of custom solutions for people and build cool stuff, which is really why I'm passionate about it. I knew a lot of the team before I decided to come on to Trio, and just trying to focus on the Bitcoin ecosystem, I think, is super needed. There's a lot of larger marketplaces out there that do a bunch of different stuff, but I'm really happy to be on a team that's like focusing on Bitcoin first as a priority and creating cool stuff. I mean, case in point with the audio nulls, I'll have to get used to saying that, but it's such a unique project. When Ordinals first started, it was one of the first things I heard people talk about, like, oh, is this possible, to put music on Bitcoin? And back then, nobody thought that it was possible because of file limits, but here we are, man. We're here. We're actually going to be launching a collection with you guys and doing some really cool stuff, so I'm really excited just to kind of hear a breakdown of where you're at on the project and talk about some of the crazy wizardry that's technically over my head in terms of recursiveness and all that cool stuff. But yeah, man, Trio's been banging out projects. It's been a little bit of a bumpy road, but I feel like we've done a good job of creating as much decentralized architecture as we possibly can for the
you guys have built some really amazing tooling. Maybe just mention that. What's that called again? The sort of the tooling for building your own wallet connect.
Yeah, Wallet Connect. So that's the Laser Eyes guys, Bunsy and Hathbanger. Trio is a very proud sponsor of the Laser Eyes team. They're doing incredible open source work, and they've made it super easy to be able to basically like connect to the 10 largest wallets in the ecosystem with an API. And Ordinals bought, like, we sponsored them, but we also integrated them into our API. And I don't know, I mean, people who have really dug in and built stuff know this, but Ordinals bought API. Since we were one of the first inscription services to exist, we power a whole lot of the stuff in the industry now, which is really cool.
Yeah, that's amazing.
So,
Bruff moved so quickly. He was the fastest mover of everyone in our kind of gang at that point. He was the first person who had a working platform up and running instant, like within 24 hours or something. It was insane.
It was. That weekend, I know that he'll never forget it, and I won't either, because he messaged me after it was over, just like, oh man, it was insane. Literally within 10 hours of he and his co-founder creating the Ordinal Spot site, the degens melted the servers in 10 hours just from sheer demand. So yeah, I mean, having your eyes open and just paying attention is most of the battle, you know, for sure.
Absolutely.
Moving fast. So.
Yeah, no, it was super impressive. Super impressive. So yeah, very exciting, and that's great, man. It's amazing. I didn't know that you were working with those guys. So it's you're definitely around, getting around the place, and you're involved in a lot of exciting projects. It's very cool.
It's exactly where I want to be, man. It's been a long journey for me, but I really mean it when I say I'm working my dream job. I love who I'm working with. I love building on Bitcoin. I love being able to talk with people like yourself, who are all over the world and building crazy, cool new projects. So yeah, and you know, on Trio, something I forgot to mention. I mean, we just made a huge announcement this past week. So our token's deflationary now. The Trio token is going to be like one of the main utility tokens, other than like Liquidium. I would say us and Liquidium are the two biggest ones. But every mint that we do from now on is going to buy back and burn Trio. So that's something that I'm really bullish about. And we also just burned 100,000 Trio this past week. So not a lot of people are, talking about it yet, but it showed up in the chart a bit. So it's a good week, man. Whenever a community guy can help spread that message.
Yeah, awesome. It's very exciting, everything that's going on. And like you were saying earlier, I think it's great that you heard about, Ordinals so early on, but I think there's people who are really true builders in this space are looking for true utility. We're looking for the solutions that are the solutions for people that aren't in the space. The solutions that are for the real world, solutions that are real. They're not about making money. They're not about crypto. They're about helping solve a real world problem with a blockchain solution. And that's been what my mission from the
exactly what you're tackling
of Ordinals has always been about. As soon as I realized what the comparison is when you're thinking about the programmatic assembly of a song, when all musicians working in a digital audio workstation, it just works in exactly the same way. All we're doing is transferring it from a hard drive to a blockchain, and suddenly you have all this amazing, like this magic that happens that then allows us to build a system that the future performing rights organizations can use as payment rails, as rails to understand who to attribute, and not just artists. This is all builders. This is every, imagine if a song could remember everyone who'd done what, and you could just say to the song, hey, who did that? Who turned that up? Who turned that down? Who put that bit in? And this is what we can do now. This is literally what the ledger opens up, is this ability for a song's DNA to be searchable. And that for people who understand the tricky side of what's going on in music, that is like a holy grail, really, for bringing back
it's huge.
Sovereignty to artists. So yeah, I'm very excited that we finally, it's 2 years ago, I think I mentioned in a tweet earlier today, it was actually 2 years to the day. It was the 25th of June 2023 when I had the epiphany, and I instantly inscribed it and tweeted it and said, I've had this idea, I've inscribed it, go and read it. And then 2 years later, we're now here about to talk to, this amazing artist who's going to jump in and basically lay down the first bit of concrete foundation for this new world, some beats to get us started.
Extremely exciting.
And so it's just, it's moving very much in the right direction. I'm still not under any, illusions that this is going to happen overnight, as much as I always feel it should. But this is very much we're moving in a brilliant direction here, and Kieran, who I'll introduce in a sec, has also been a great ambassador for what I'm doing as well. He's still learning, but it's like he's already been talking to about other people who might want to bring more libraries into BAM. That's one other thing I might just explain quickly. I just wanted to make sure that people understood.
I was going to say, so
yeah,
I reposted the stream, so my audience probably hasn't heard a good breakdown of Audionals yet. So just go ahead and give me like the elevator pitch, so that
the elevator pitch.
people watching
I'm going to
first
read
time.
this because I am bad at this stuff, and so I have actually written
No worries.
some elevator pitches because
Let's go.
I struggle. I think I struggle to put it into words sometimes. So I think some of these were quite good. I was testing these on Kieran earlier. I think the one that worked here was okay. So Spotify pays fractions of a cent because the intermediaries own the rails. Ordinals moves these rails to Bitcoin. By capturing the entire creation graph on chain, it becomes possible for royalties to flow directly to every contributor through more capable and streamlined performing rights organizations, reclaiming true royalty stewardship while fees collapse and once impossible remixes become new revenue streams in minutes. Because that it ends there, but that last section is really just about the inefficiencies and all of these roadblocks that we have because of all these intermediaries. And actually, if it was just a simple arrangement between you and the person remixing you, and there was no one sharing, stealing ultimately all of these hard-earned dollars, that we would just live in a different world where musicians could be much more, much more generous with one another,
but recognized.
Just much more generous with each other as well. Though not having to fight for scraps. That's what we're used to doing. We fight for scraps, and we're told to be grateful for the scraps when we get them, and it shouldn't be that way.
Sure.
So
built on
that's
many years of the music corporation.
It's evolved this way, and this is where I feel this is why it's going to take so long, is because we have to devolve out of this situation. It's the next generation. It's these kids that we really teach now, who go, okay, I now understand that I am in charge of this, and that I say no when I'm offered champagne to sign a contract. I know how to fight for my own rights, and so it's going to be, we're breeding the new generation. So the other part of Ordinals, so that was kind of explains a bit about what Ordinals is. It's about putting the entire production process on chain, where everything becomes part of the ledger. And then BAM was born out of that. BAM stands for the Bitcoin Ordinal Matrix. I'm just referring to ordinals really in this term of, like, when I first proposed this, the idea wasn't just about audio. I was mainly inscribing audio as test, but the premise behind it all was about the software. It was about this recursive program that would deal with everything. So we're talking about not just the audio, but the effects, the plugins, the synthesizers. All of these things will become part of this. And through building it on my own, I realized I just have to somehow spur asynchronous development of this. And so BAM was the natural thing, was to create a kind of sandbox where it says, okay, let's try to create an area where everyone can work in a place where there's compatibility between all applications. And so whatever you bring here, it should work with everyone else's stuff. So you can instantly be pulled into a project with any number of other third-party plugins, synthesizers, samples, whatever you like. And so,
would it be fair to say that this is like an on-chain garage band, kind of, or like that's the idea behind
it? A decentralized garage band, yeah. So on-chain, decentralized, where everyone can build, and that's the idea, is to build it to say, here's how you top and tail what you're building effectively, so it will fit in this system, and everything between that, you do what the hell you want with it, and you just make something really cool, and we'll just tell you how to top and tail it, so it will just slot in a modular fashion, and then you can slot it into any channel path. Like building a modular sound desk, a model, channel flow. So that's what BAM is about. Ultimately, is about sort of creating that, finding an easier way to make us all be able to work together.
Man, I helped found the Bitcoin Starship Music Collective. I don't know if you've connected with those guys yet, but that's James posted over at Liquidium. And then Violetta Zeroni is a part of it, several other people. I definitely need to make that introduction, because I feel like, so James and I have produced music together that he's working on putting on chain. But I feel like that there's so many natural synergies here that it's a shame y'all haven't met yet.
This again it's so hard for us all to meet, isn't it? You know what it's like. We work incredibly long hours. We're incredibly focused. We're so focused. Sometimes we miss things going on. I was in NFTs as you know, I started one of the first marketplaces, did the first NFTs on Stacks.
Yeah.
I was well in there, and when ordinals happened, the first I knew of it, I was literally pulled live into a podcast, and they're like, Jim, you have to tell us what this ordinals thing's about. And I'm like, you know, guys, I've seen this word banded around, but I just haven't had time to. And then they told me what it was, and my instant take was like, oh my god, this is like a massive attack vector for Bitcoin. This is terrible. I was like, this is dreadful for the first. And these guys were like, Jim, this isn't what we wanted from you. We wanted some positivity. It did take a couple of weeks for me to turn around and go, no, this is great. This is what Bitcoin was built for. But you know, this is the nature of things. We can't watch everything that's going on. We can't see everything that's going on, and so it's really important that we take opportunities like this to do these introductions and stuff. So. If you've got anything else to say, or I'll bring Kieran in.
No, yeah, I definitely don't want to take any more time away from Kieran because he's a huge guest. But thanks for having me on, man. This is just the first step. I think we're gonna have you on the show, I'm sure, on my show before we met. There's lots of really cool things coming down the pike. I've already sent this stream to my buddy at Bitcoin Starship, so hopefully make that link up. But thanks for having me on stream, man. And I'm gonna be excited to hear Kieran and hear the beats and all that good stuff.
Great to see you again, man.
So I'm gonna hop so that he can have the spotlight, but I'm gonna keep watching the stream.
Great.
So thanks for having me on,
man. Take care, dude. See you soon.
Peace.
Right, let me just get this back where it needs to be. Get my camera back in the studio, and then we'll bring Kieran in. Make this full screen again. Kieran's in the studio with me here, so that we're going to share my microphone. So hopefully we'll. I've got a lovely microphone, this Yeti mic, and it does do a figure 8. Yes, it's got a figure 8 pickup pattern, so hopefully you'll be able to hear us both well. So that. Let's welcome Kieran Pepper, everybody. Here he is.
Thank you.
The man.
Hey.
So, so it's
such a smooth entry.
Who would have known that we were just sat in this tiny studio? So it's amazing having you here, man. This is so exciting. I think you heard a lot of the chat that was going on there. I think you could hear some of the passion and how long we've been at this.
I think it'd be really good to have a chat with Purple another time, because he sounds like he's a kindred spirit. Yeah.
He's done a lot of stuff. He's another one of these people. If I was talking to him earlier about another friend, EOM Games, who was involved in a lot of things very early on, and he's another person who you wouldn't really know it, but is behind all these major projects. He's like a sort of silent partner. I think Purple's got a little bit of that vibe. He's kind of like the Forrest Gump of the crypto world.
He seems incredibly cool, and just the introduction to this. Obviously, this is pretty new to me as well. It just totally blows my mind when we talk about it, and then hearing someone else talk about it. Everything starts to make a little bit more sense, and to know that it's the start of something very exciting as well is really kind of, do you know what I mean? Very exciting to me.
So do you remember like the first time that you heard about like music on chain or that video?
Yeah, there were people talking about it when I was at different. Been working at different music education providers, and a couple of stages back, there was someone talking about it's all going to be on, all going to be on blockchain. I was like, what is that? And that was literally how I don't think he even knew himself. So that was the start of it, and then I started hearing bits and pieces coming through, and I've spoken to people that have been developing stuff, and you hear the positives of it, but the actual mechanics behind it kind of blows my mind a little bit.
And so let's just go back right then to the beginning.
Okay.
So one of the things that we're going to learn about you is you're a multi-instrumentalist.
Yes.
You didn't start as a drummer.
No, started on keys, and that's probably because my grandma used to let me play the old reed organ, and I'd sort of be self-taught. I'd teach myself how to play tracks just by playing by ear. That's how she used to play as well. And it was just a case of hearing something, playing it back, and then working out the chords from that. You work out the notes that work together, and then that progressed to guitar, working out that you had certain. I found out what the notes of the strings were, and then realised that it's just like frets. If the frets are like keys. If you go up, then you can make it, and then find your own chords from that, and it progressed from there.
This is how people with ADHD learn to play music.
Totally. Well, it was just like, you know, my first understanding of music was a Hoover, was a vacuum cleaner, was sitting on the stairs while my mum's doing the hoovering, and it produces a tone like a drone, you know, and then as a kid sitting on the stairs, singing and finding that note, and that makes it happy, that makes it sad, you know, finding the note at the top. And so
Okay.
I was kind of into music from that age, and then when you realise where the happy note is and where the sad note is on a keyboard, you can then sort of...
And were you making harmonies as well? Were you...
Yeah, I understood what harmony was just from the
Okay.
drone and pitching against it.
Yeah.
So I think that was an interesting start to music. And then I took piano lessons at school, but I did about 4 of those before the teacher was like, "You're not reading the music." I was like, no, I'm working it out very slowly at home and then playing it by ear. And then it was like getting in a band, and keyboards weren't particularly cool, so learning how to play guitar, teaching myself how to play guitar. I was in a band called the Changelings, and it was just like a local circuit thing. That blew my mind as well, like when you go out to a gig and you realise that people on your local scene can do music. You know, it's not just people making records, but you know, there are bands playing, and so that really got me into that. And we did that for a few years. You know, it was a mix between sort of, I was into the Cocteau Twins and the guitarist was into Velvet Underground and drummer was into the Doors. And we did these kind of mishmash of that, and then the drummer said he wanted to leave because he wanted to be a front man, and I was like, well, I'm more into being in a band, so why don't we swap round? And then so that's how I got into drumming, really. Yeah.
Okay, how quickly did you pick it up?
I used to drum open-handed because in the music room at school, while I was teaching myself the piano, there would be like a big kind of military bass drum on its side. I put a coat on it, so it made this really nice thud sound. I was like, sounds good. And then a snare, so I was literally doing like a Jesus and Mary chain kick and snare standing up, and so I'd play like that. And then I got behind the kit, and my hands were like that, and so that's the hi-hat. Okay. And I drum like that, and then the drummer from the band was like, no, you're doing it wrong. He was into John Densmore and like really into like proper drumming. But again, he was self-taught, but he'd been taught by someone else and was passing the information down. He was like, if you're going to drum on this drum kit and you're right-handed, you've got to play like that. So I kind of broke all of what I've learned because I wanted to do it correctly. But now you've got drummers like Puffy from Faith No More, who's open-handed and incredible because their minds think in a different way, and there's plenty of drummers around Brighton. Theo Williams-Birchall, who I used to work with at Waterbear, incredible drummer, open-handed, brain thinks differently, you know, very cool.
So is this, I'm just thinking as in terms of like crew, is this going to be like a lefty?
It's a right. Well, I was
sweep?
I was open-handed on a right-handed kit, so it's a normal.
So it's a normal kit.
Yeah,
you're
it's not like
just
you're going,
switching
oh my
around,
god,
okay.
we've got to change the kit round for God's sake. You know.
Well, happy or sad to see an open-handed drummer?
Yeah, but normally these would be left-handed people on a
Okay.
right-handed kit, but
Okay,
I'm
because
right-handed.
they're
But I
forced
was
to do
just,
it.
I
Okay.
did it. It was just all the
So is
wrong
that
way
what
round.
a lot of people went open-handed because they were left-handed playing on
I
a
think so.
right-handed kit?
Maybe I think it was just because I was doing it. I don't know how. Maybe I don't know.
Just
I can't
weren't
think now.
shown,
It's
no,
the-
it's just
I was the wrong way
natural.
around. It was one of those. Yeah, and so I got into the drumming thing with the Changelings. And funny, it was called the Changelings because we changed round, and that was the real start of it, really. And then I got known as a drummer around my local town, which is Chelmsford in Essex, and there was a band called Garp playing, and Garp were very much modelled around early 90s crossover acts like Pop Will Eat Itself that were using samplers and Jesus Jones, and so it was like very exciting indie rock pop music but with break beats. You know, you've got to remember what was going on in the background with acid house and breakbeat, and you know, Dust Brothers, well, the English Dust Brothers becoming the Chemical Brothers and that kind of thing. And so Garp were around that time, and that's when they were like, we need a new drummer. I took over from Julian Beeston, who joined Night Sareb to join the 101 tour in America with Depeche Mode. And so I instantly felt like it was an upgrade because I'm taking the kit off this guy and joining a band with samples and then having to sort of play along with that. So my mindset was really kind of shifted and challenged, because I then had to play along with a click or break beats, and it was like that. So that whole learning curve was about monitoring, did I need a click? Could I hear the beats well enough? I used to have an amp and play the beats through by the side of me. That got too noisy. And then having a click. Do I have the click playing live? No, people don't want to hear that. This was like
That's a real art form,
91, 92, you know.
Learning to take it. Play
Yeah,
with the
yeah. And then after a while you realise that when you're playing along to a click and then you can't hear it, you're in time because as soon as you can
Once
hear
it disappears, sure.
that's it, and then you can start to relax with it. And so I really cut my teeth with that kind of relationship with music and rhythm, and sometimes with the GARP as well, they would layer multiple samples, and then you would get the groove, and then you're like, what am I marking, what am I matching, what am I playing around in between the beats? And so I started to get into that, and really used to love the sampling thing as well. So at the time doing GARP, even though I'd gone full circle with keys, guitar, drums, back to sort of playing keys again, it was a sampler. I bought a W30, a Roland W30 at the time, and that kind of opened the door to sampling with the small amount of time you had for that, and so because I would see how they would work, and I wanted to do the same thing at home. And then after GARP finished, it was like I was in bands for like 3 years for some reason. I don't know why, but it seemed to be 3 years, and then something happened. We'll fall out, or someone moved away, or something. But when GARP finished, it was Real TV, which was the band, which is like a band of brothers and a transit band going around the country. This is when we were starting to cut our teeth on the live circuit. And this was like a punk band, but we also had a keyboard player as well. I was back on drums at this point. But and I think at that point I was like, right, so I like playing keyboards, I like sampling, I love playing drums, I like playing guitar for this band as well. We're like writing songs on guitar and giving them to the band, then getting on the drum kit. So then I'm like, right, who am I, what am I doing? Bit confused, but in love with the live thing, in love with working with other people. I think it's always been about, just working with one other person or a collection of people that are on a mission to do something exciting, and often really fractious elements coming together, sometimes working. Often in the studio though with Real TV it was a nightmare, because we were all very strong people coming from different spheres within the music industry and in terms of genre and what we liked, and so we could never decide on anything.
I think sometimes people outside music don't realise quite how much collaboration is a big part of it. Like it's
listening and push and pull, and when you've got 5 strong characters, that's really hard. There's lots of arguments going on. And so when I was doing the Real TV thing, Prodigy at the time, we're going to slip into the Prodigy story now. If that's, I'm just going to segue straight in there.
Just give us an idea of time where we are.
Okay, right. So we're like Real TV was like 94 to 97. So during Real TV, at that time, Prodigy had just released Jilted Generation, and Liam was working on Fat of the Land. They got Giz on guitar. No, they had Jim on guitar first. My friend from Whittam, we're all from Essex, so it's like Braintree, Chelmsford, Whittam area kind of. And they had Jim on guitar, and then they got Giz in. When they got Giz in, it's starting to get a little bit more punky. The Firestarter track was happening. And before they got Giz in, I think they asked Fraggle if he'd join, and I think he turned it down. Or he might have made this up. But I think that was the story, is that Fraggle got asked to join, but he turned it down because he was in the band of brothers, Real TV. And then they asked me to play drums, and I said yes, which totally destroyed the band, and I feel really guilty for. But it was one of those moments where you get asked to do something, or an opportunity comes up, and you're like, I have to make this happen. Because I'm self-taught as well, self-taught keys, self-taught guitar, self-taught drums, master of none of those instruments. So to get asked to, I think it was for Liam to ask me, it was because he felt comfortable. Because I have to take a step back a little bit. When I was doing Real TV, we did a recording in Strongroom Studios in Curtin Road, in London, and we were being mixed by Neil McClellan, who worked with Prodigy. So he would obviously spoken to Liam. Liam knew about me and knew about the band, and when we'd finished working with Neil McClellan for the Real TV recordings, he gave me a DAT tape, digital audio tape, which, defunct now. But at the time, I didn't have a DAT player, so I was living in Braintree at the time, Fraggle's granddad's place, and it was like, how am I going to listen to the tracks we just played? And I was like, I'm going to go to Liam Howlett's house, and I knocked on his door, and I was like, hi, sorry, you don't know me, I'm Kieran. No, first off, sorry, I'm babbling a little bit here. I walked through Braintree High Street and saw Keith, who was trying to keep a low profile because it was at the height of the Firestarter thing. He'd just done the Breathe video because he had the purple and the green. And
He was very recognisable.
very recognisable. And I went up to him, and he was immediately like, defensive because he must have been getting so much attention at the time and becoming unwanted, I'm sure. And I was like, look, I've got this tape. Do you think it would be cool for me to go to Liam's? And he was like, oh yeah, you should be fine. And so I went to Liam's, knocked on the door. Hey, come in. And went in, and whilst he's in the middle of mixing Minefields or something from Fat the Land in his house. It's the most amazing house. And then stopping and starting and playing it back on one system and then playing it in another system. And I'm like, this is how a producer works. He's listening to what he's just done on different systems. This is very cool. And then I saw the W30, and that's how he started on W30, then 2 W30s, and then built it around samplers and stuff like that. So then we had this common interest with the W30 workstation.
What's the size of each sample on a W30?
Well, you get like 15-second sampling time, or 7.5 seconds, and then you halve the bit rate, and it's very, very small. So you have to learn to be really creative. If you want to create a full song on one floppy disk, then you have to be really careful with how you use your sampling and how you truncate stuff and the remaining sampling time you have left over. So
it's interesting because that ties in well with what we're doing with
Absolutely.
audios, the idea of like
Absolutely.
small files
Yeah.
that
So
get recursively produced into big songs.
Exactly. So when I realised, you could just plug a microphone in the back and sample something, and I was making drum beats with, playing a drum kit with kick and snare with one hand whilst jangling my keys in my pocket, like while the plane's going overhead, and then suddenly got this mad loop. And I still use that loop
the
to today.
experimentalism started.
It was all about like what can I do that's really weird and has got a bit of a vibe, and sometimes I'd record that. I don't know how even I recorded it now, because nowadays I just record on my phone. But at the time it was probably like onto a tape and then sampling from tape or straight into the. I think I probably did it on tape first, played for a few bars.
Like a Walkman type thing.
Yeah. Or it was probably a National Panasonic cassette deck that was my dad's with the VU, so you could you could
the flat ones.
Yeah, and you could crank the you could turn the gain right up, so the needles were like this, and it would distort. It sounded great. So I would either do that, like spend a few minutes recording a beat, and then use my sample time to get the best loops and then build a song around that, or I would try and use 0.2 of a second to burst a balloon and use that as a snare drum, because obviously with the W30, as soon as you sampled it, it won't, you could your original key could be C5, and then suddenly you've got
and
then
this
trimming.
is I've built into the new sequence.
And then trimming the samples
thing,
on the W30. If anyone's knows what I'm talking about, will be laughing, because it was so tedious. But it became the ritual of sampling it, and then finding the start point was literally like you've got a data wheel and you're going, and rounding up the numbers until you can hear the start of the, and obviously the slower you do it, you get that fine tuned start point.
It's an art form.
It's an art form, and then it's really funny because when doing the Prodigy stuff, when we were playing live, the live system changed so many times. There would be like a skeleton track playing, and then Howlett bringing in loops and top lines and synth parts and all this kind of stuff, and that would change from like Alesis ADAT to HD24s to computers on stage and that kind of stuff, but. Always, this is when I was doing it, I did it for 10 years. Always when they played Poison, it would be from the W30, literally mono out. And it was probably one of the fattest tunes in the set. Literally direct from the W30 and the processing that he'd used. Yeah.
That says a lot, doesn't it?
Yeah, so I've rambled a little bit there.
But no, I mean, just naming all that equipment really takes it back, the ADAT 24, because an ADAT, it was eight channels.
Yeah,
right? So that's almost like three VCRs stacked on top of each other.
Yeah.
With this enormous kind of head unit where you can see all 24.
Yeah, it would be a videotape cassette size.
Yeah.
And if you wanted to do a 16-track recording, you'd have to link to.
It was basically a rack. I mean, you're wheeling a rack around.
Yeah, really heavy.
Yeah. Okay, so you've started this relationship through needing to play your DAT tape.
Matt Howlett through that started becoming friends just through the W30 stuff, and he was playing me stuff. Obviously, we've got there's quite a few people within our past that were very similar. You know, there's a lot of sort of touch points. Just being from Chelmsford, you know, where he's from as well, and there wasn't ever any thought of like, oh, maybe I could join the prod. I never ever thought that ever. And then one day I just get a phone call towards the end of '97, and it was like, I was working. It's really funny. I was working shifts at the Royal Mail, because working at the Royal Mail, all of Real TV could do that. We could all sort of, it was just a casual job that allowed us to rehearse 3 times a week, and we could all just go and sling sacks of letters. So had been a night shift. Like, I'd get a phone call. It must have been 11 o'clock in the morning, and it was like, all right, it's Liam. And I was like, oh, fucking hell, Liam. Because my brother's called Liam, and I thought it was my brother.
Oh, really?
And he was like, all right, sorry. So I was like, so who's this? Liam Howlett. Oh, wake up. Hey, how you doing? Yeah. Just wondering if you'd play drums for Prodigy. I'm like, now I'm really awake, you know.
Wow.
Yeah, because it was just
phenomenal.
like so out of the blue, you know, and being self-taught. And I think it was, you know, I think it's because he felt relaxed with me, and he needed someone from the hometown who understood the dynamic.
This is when they were at a peak as well. So
This
you're
is
straight into
they've just released Firestarter, and Fat of the Land had just come out. I think that's
Wow.
something. Yeah, they played Red Square
Incredible.
to like 10 million people or something ridiculous. It was really insane. Oh, it must have been 1 million. Can't have been 10 million. Might have been 10 million. I don't know. The people that were watching it, I mean, it was literally the streets going back all over the place. You know, heads for days. And then so I was like, yeah, I can do that. And he was like, and I said, shall I pop over? And he goes, well, I'm in Germany. I'm going to fly back in 3 days. Why don't you look at these 3 tracks?
That's incredible.
And so I was like, yeah, cool, no worries. And so I booked the studio, phoned down, like,
right.
you know, I booked the studio, learnt the tracks. Yeah, it was playing to loops. So I was like, I know this.
Yeah.
And it's anticipating, you know, with playing along to, you know, when you're playing along to a click and that disappears, you know you're on it. But when you're working with breakbeats, particularly like a song like, I mean, Howler's a genius, right? In terms of like picking certain things that go together, and sometimes he would like mix meter stuff. So the track called Their Law, we've got like programmed hats and something super swung or something super straight, but like, what am I following here? But learning it and feeling the groove and learning what to mark and what to play around I felt comfortable doing that. And so I just rehearsed, I think, for half a day. He flies over. I can't remember if he picked me up or not. I remember going in one of his very cool cars and being very blown away. But we go to the rehearsal studio, and I think I do 16 bars, 32 bars of each track. He's like, yeah, no worries, all good. Flies back. And he goes, we're going to do because they didn't have a drummer before. It was him running the beats. It's coming off the samples, and you know, And so
what was, what was your first gig?
First gig was the Mayfair in Newcastle.
Okay.
So I'd been playing at the Army and Navy in Chelmsford. I think that was one night we maxed it out with about 800 people, and it was against all fire regulations. But that was the biggest I played to, and then it was 9,000 people. You know, and didn't rehearse with the band. There was no rehearsal with the band. It was literally show up, here's the set, learn the set. He obviously gave me the set beforehand, and I was on the tour bus. I think because when you've got someone bringing someone new into the tribe, you've got to work out if this person is going to fit, right? So it wasn't instantly hanging out with the band. It was literally you travel with the support. There was a support DJ and break dancers, Tough Tim Twist and Evo and Archie and Brian. Some great, lovely people who were, friends for life, really. And so I was on the bus with those guys, and then set my own kit up, did the thing, and then it was like, I think, just thinking, keep your head down, ask the right things. Yeah, you've got to kind of represent, but you're not trying to be part of the band, but you've got to give it and live it and love it. And so that was the start of a very, I would say, no, not gradual. It's quite a steep learning curve. Quick,
that sounds pretty steep.
But there was a lot. I mean, it was steep and long, lots to learn, and quickly about what's cool. Often, they were incredibly cool people, because they'd been through so many different. As the band evolved, you know what I mean, it was always very in the spotlight, but they chose to step away from that, get it sorted, and then come through, you know. And so it was a great lesson in how to do things properly, professionally, I think. You know, and I made quite a few errors, you know, with like saying the wrong thing and speaking out of turn, or you know, just that sounds like it was kind of hard-ass, but it wasn't. It was just like you just wanted to fit in and wanted to be cool. All these people have had this experience to this point, and I'm kind of trying to join in, you know, when I'm invited, you know.
There is also just it's a complex dynamic being on the road, you know. It's like you're in this super intense, very small, and it feels even smaller than it is, space that you're crammed into with
but
each
they were
other,
really lovely and really
any one person not working in that vibe ruins it for everyone.
But everybody has their moments of, you know, of feeling frustrated and all that kind of stuff, but they were really lovely. And even like I remember being on tour in America, and it was so good and so much fun all the time that there was just one day when I was looking out the window of the tour bus and I was just like in tears. I don't know why. And Leroy, who was in the band at the time, was just like, because it's all been up. You've got to need to rebalance, have a reset. Yeah. And so they were really, really lovely. I learned so much from them. Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah. And so playing along with beats live, and when it's not a click, it's all about the two. So if you could hear the one and you're with the two, you know, you can measure that interval and because Howlett would do this thing in between tracks when we were as part of the set where he would have a loop and speed it up, especially when you got the computers involved, and he was I don't know, it was Ableton or what he was using at the time. He was like taking the loops and then literally changing the tempo whilst we, you know, jamming it live. So if you can measure it, you can hear the interval and you know the loop, you can anticipate where the two's going to be. Suddenly you're jamming along with someone who's like changing the tempo of a sample. And I found that very exciting.
Okay, that sounds like a good tip, because it's definitely like a rock drummer going onto a click can sometimes just almost seem impossible.
Yeah. I mean, and I think me being self-taught and also not being technically that proficient, I think really helped, because I understood the groove and understood what not to play. Often, with the drum kit, I was playing an acoustic kit. And so I worked very closely with John Byrne, who was the sound engineer, front of house, sorry. And we were like talking about where the drums sit within the mix. And obviously, so Liam's happy with this. It's got to sound like it's got to be the best ever. So you don't want to be playing over the top of stuff or having some really trashy hi-hats getting in the way of, you know, some beautiful synth that has been created, you know. So we'd have the main snare would be like a doof snare, which would sit underneath Howlett's stuff, and then if it wanted to come out of the mix, I had a timbali kind of snare, which was cranked up sometimes with snares on, sometimes snares off. So you know, on that coming out of the mix, and then toms would be slightly higher. Cymbals would just be in the mix because it kind of, you know, cymbals eat guitars, eat vocals. So it was mainly there for the aesthetic, but adding some acoustic weight when needed.
I mean, I remember seeing Prodigy probably around the early 2000s, and just being blown away by just the sheer low end volume.
Yeah. So we talked about Poison from the W30 being the loudest on stage. You know, Keith and Maxim and Leroy and Liam, they all wanted to be enveloped by the sound, and I'm sure it's true to today. And so in order for that to happen, you've got the side fills with the massive, the speakers just around Liam's nest themselves, and the fills that I had, I was never used to having my own drum fill, and then suddenly you've got like three, one behind you and two at the side. And so when that in Poison, you know, the bass drop hit when you're on stage, the gel in your eye would vibrate. Your eyes with your vision would do that. If you're walking across the stage during sound check, it's like, oh my god. It was all actually behind the kit was okay, but you can still feel it in your gut.
Insane amount of
so much bass.
I mean, I remember because I remember that one time. I remember I think it was maybe Isle of Wight or somewhere, but I remember I was mixing for another band that were playing before Prodigy, and I remember turning up and and the engineer seeing my eyes and going, "Oh, sorry, mate, you don't get to use any of that."
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
Right, no, that's just for Prodigy. As soon as Prodigy comes on,
Absolutely.
it's going to double in volume.
And that's why they are always the loudest and the best, and the best quality music, the best light show.
Yeah.
I mean, now it's like it's bigger than it's ever been. I went to see them in Brighton recently. It was incredible.
Where was that?
The Brighton Centre.
Brighton Centre.
Mm.
Okay.
Yeah, but with the LEDs and everything, and the big guy with the X-rays coming out of his eyes, and blew me away.
Amazing.
I mean, I was a fan of the band anyway, and I still am. So it's kind of gone full circle.
Yeah, that's an amazing journey. So then take us on to what happens next. Then, so then because you. So
it ran its course. I mean, I did a project with Keith, like a solo thing, which didn't really work out for various reasons, which is a real shame because there were some amazing songs in that, and I think that was the start of me starting to produce. I was producing the demos with him.
This was also sampler based, wasn't it?
Yeah, I didn't use a computer.
Yeah.
I mean, at the time, I've seen working with my friend Bob, who I work with today. He was in Real TV. He was on a very early version of Cubase. I was seeing Liam Howlett going from Cubase to Logic, and Ableton, I think via. Can't think of the name of the platform we was using.
Tools.
No, it was the other one that he did the.
Cakewalk.
No, it's gone out of my mind. But there was another one.
Okay.
But I wasn't computer savvy at all. I actually was scared of them. I still am a little bit. I mean, I use Logic all the time now, but generally, if I'm not making music and using the program that I know very well, then I'm a little bit like, ah. So I was using a Roland SP808, which is like a sampler with 16 pads. It evolved from when I was on tour with Prodigy. I bought it was Boss because it was America, SP202, which is like a sampler with 8 pads on. That's where I sampled the keys kit.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, and it had a microphone on the sampler, so it was literally
okay,
like
so you could
press it, and you
record
had to press start and stop. So it was like and make your own.
And when
loop.
the record button becomes an instrument.
Totally that.
Wow.
Yeah. So I've gone off at a complete tangent again. What were we talking about?
That's why we've got the iPad here.
Fantastic.
No, we were just talking about how it sort of we've gone through. You did produce some stuff.
So I was starting to produce these ideas with Keith. It started off because Keith wanted to learn guitar, and he had this really kind of old, like fucked up Roy Gallagher Strat through loads of really cool pedals, making really mental noises, and his skills were kind of basic, but he was cool with like making sound. So we would just jam. I would get on the bass, and his mate Tony would be on drums, and we would jam and record the jams. For some reason, it always used to be 1 hour and 6 minutes. We'd get to the end of the epic opus of what we were creating and go, right, stop. Press. We were recording on hard disk recorders there, and then we'd listen back for another hour and 6 minutes. And whilst we were listening back, I'd be like, that bit there's really cool. That bit there's really cool. And this was like not done to a click. This was just jamming. But then going back in, and then from the hard disk recording, then going in through the sampler and going, right, that's a loop there. Let's build that. And then, that loop's a little bit similar. We'll stretch it a little bit to get that in time. And then suddenly you've got like in front of you 16 pads within each thing. With there's the bass line, there's the drums, there's a Keith's guitar, and then suddenly we were making ideas for songs like that, and it evolved into that, and then it evolved into getting a deal and doing an album, but it didn't kind of translate because it got the songs became, but then the way the songs were played were different, so it didn't really work out for various reasons, which was very frustrating, particularly for Keith. So I think the whole thing kind of run its course, because Keith was like concentrating on that, and then was like, right, let's get back into the prod thing, and then obviously with back on the prod thing, it really started kicking off. But for me, I think it was like Keith was a little bit like, you shouldn't really be here now. Yeah, and also probably a reminder of it not working. So, okay. And it was I think it was definitely time to sort of go, okay, I need to do something else now. Okay. And then from that point, Prodigy were like went off, and doing all these amazing albums. So it was all cool.
And so how quickly did you?
I had to earn money from but doing the Keith thing was cool. We were in a deal, and it was great. And I'd gone from You know, if you think about starting the Prodigy at the age of 24 or something, to then 34 with a house and 2 kids, and then like, I've really got to do something that's going to work now. It was, you know, then that's when I started. Someone said, you thought about doing some teaching? I was like, what can I do? I can't do teaching. Okay. And I went down to Brighton.
So the education spark was lit quite a long time ago.
Yeah, that was happening during tours. Actually, there was
that's around the time. So I remember like talking about connections with people. I said to you when I first met you. At some point when I was searching for your email, I suddenly found an email from around 2007 or 2008,
right,
where we were CC together. That is just those links together through education. I think that was through doing something for one of the colleges.
Right, yeah.
But it's like, so that was ages ago.
So I started at BIM, Brighton Institute of Modern Music, as it was back then, in 2003.
Yes, it was. It was a BIM email, I think. Wasn't
it?
And so because we were leading on to, because we have got some music to play, just some demos that you've brought in, some old and some new stuff that we don't have to get clearance for, but just some really interesting.
Yeah, it was really hard. It was really hard to find stuff that YouTube would go, well, we can't have that on there. Yeah. So the track, I think the first one is this Wing of Swan thing, and the reason I chose this, one, because I was like, what music are we going to play? So I went through loads of old emails of what was sent. It's funny you're talking about old emails, and a lot of the emails were like between like 2000 and till now, 2020 and to now, so the last 5 years, and these would be demos of songs I'll be working on with people. So this particular one is just like it's just like a minute and a bit of a track called Wing of Swan, which was basically when I was working at BIM in Brighton, the guy that was running the college was a guy called Mark Claydon from Pitch Shifter, who's like one of my best friends, he's always doing lots of different projects, and he started this thing, and he's got this most amazing concept for the song and the bass line. I was like, great. And I started programming some stuff around it. My friend Stu Brutal, who I ended up working with Arcade Paradise, I started writing music for computer games. We can come back to that in a bit if you want. And so this particular track has got Mark, myself, Stu Brutal doing some rapping. I don't think it's particularly in this section of the song. One of the students from BIM called Jazz Ardley singing some vocals, and Ace from Skunk Anansi did some guitar on it. Didn't go anywhere, but it's one of those things. I've got so many things on my hard drive of projects that got paused or didn't come to fruition, that at some point I think will see the light of day in some form or another. So yeah, that's.
Shall we have a listen?
Yeah.
So yeah, tell us about that.
Yeah, so there's like a mash of everything, and this is probably why I didn't go anywhere, because at the time I think my brain probably was a bit too much for people. If you can hear how it went off this really weird tangent at the end, I probably found some kind of tuned pan or something, and that's where that kind of the hook at the end came from.
I really like that sound.
But yeah, it was like, because I was throwing this beat in that was like kind of more kind of hip hop, and I was like, I just want to make it a little bit more, give it a little bit more swagger in that direction. But though the elements within there, as I said before, Stu Brutal, Jasmine was a student at BIM. I went from BIM to ACM, in Guildford, and Stu was a rapper, student there, and he blew me away right from the start, you know, of what he was doing. But he was in this kind of zone where he wasn't particularly confident with himself, and he'd already done like 3 albums worth of stuff, and but I just kept on giving him loads of respect, and then one day I was like, do you want to do some stuff? And after the prod thing kind of folded for me, there was still, I will get there, so it seems a bit tenuous, but we'll come back. There was still a lot of potential work from the territories where prod had played, because people were asking if I'd go and DJ. And I did 2 shows DJing, and I don't know how on earth I managed to get away with it, because I'd never DJed before. I think I'd asked someone to show me how to use some decks, some CDJs. And I did a couple of shows, and I got away with the first one. Then the second one, I was like, I don't know, maybe had too much to drink, and I was just like, had no clue what I was doing. But what happened was there was a drum kit by the side of the stage. So I was like, you just play the beats. I'm going to get on the kit, because I knew, because people were there and watching. I was like, I'm just going to get on the kit. And then everyone was up for it, you know. I was luckily the sound was all right and enough for me to stay in time, and I knew how to hold back as well. So, and then I was like, that's the thing. And then so I started going out and doing some drumming with this DJ called Sergio Galoyan, who was the guy that wrote the Tattoo stuff, you know, all the things she said, Russian duo. So I started doing that, and started doing some shows with Leroy. And then the guy that was running the Prodigy community in Russia, so prodigy.ru, a guy called Dmitry Bichkov, who is also known as Gordy, he was like putting on shows and asking to do it. And then he started DJing. It was like, and then one evening we were playing, and he was getting me loads of shows. So suddenly, like, having played Russia with Prodigy, but you know, Moscow, St. Petersburg, I think Yekaterinburg was the furthest we went. Suddenly I was playing Nizhny Novgorod or Vladivostok or Perm or Astrakhan. It was really cool to be going out there and still doing stuff with Gordy. We decided we were going to do this. We were in Odessa, and he goes, should we do this properly? So yeah, we decided to do that. And then so from that, started doing these gigs, playing along to the tracks. He'd do a bit of market research as to what the best tracks were that people were into, and finding the sparse versions of that, and then I would add drums. Then it became a bass, then I'd start vocalising over the top, and we started writing songs. And that's when we got Stu Brutal involved, and we did some shows. We could play the bass face track if you want to play that next, because we did some shows in St. Petersburg and did some tracks with Stu Brutal, but it was DK from Camden, who, I mean, she must have only been like, I don't know, maybe 19, 20 when she came over and joined us. She did some shows. So this is a clip, this is a track from Bass Face with DK on it. You might have listened to it.
Take it back, you read your sentence well, and butterfly, it's time to leave yourself. The open space that lies behind your door, and all the things you have been waiting for. Hit the lock, you've done your time, you've done your time. Clean slate, never too late, feel the moonshine. Drop the fucking beat, bitch, I'm hot like a nuclear bomb. With my destiny shit, then the future is wrong. Never get weak, I'm unusually strong. If you don't want to hear me, then move me along. All of my life I've been trying my best, I ain't dying to take it back. You read your sentence well, and butterfly, it's time to leave yourself the open space that lies behind your door, and all the things you have been waiting for hit the lock. You've done your time. You've done your time. Please say never too late, feel the moonshine.
Tasteful fade out there, DJ Jim.
Yeah, when I was with Palmer Bites, they had a song called Johnny Bag of Donuts, and apparently it was for the guy who used to just do the most amazing fades. And they're like, he just needs a bag of donuts.
Nice.
And he'll do your fade for you.
Sounds like the perfect reward.
Yeah. Yeah, so that was Bass Face.
Yeah, that's quite a long time ago, that one, but it's still sounding kind of chunky, especially the drop at the end.
Sounds huge, that drop. That's great. Yeah, and so we were then going to just talk about, so you moved back into doing stuff with Sleeper. How did that?
Oh right, yeah. So when I was working at BIM, we were all doing finding our feet with the music education thing. Really, giving what we'd learned from experience, and then learning how to put that into the classroom, learning how people learn. And so it was myself, John Stewart, and a lot of other people. John Stewart's a guitarist from Sleeper. Were doing the PG Cert HE in teaching and learning, so learning how to sort of take what we've got and then apply it to other people's knowledge, and so they can bolt it on, and they're all engaged because we all learn in different ways. We like to play things, or we listen to stuff, or we see it, we write it down, and we retain that information different ways. So while we were doing that, we were talking about stuff that we'd done in the past, and then John's there starts talking about Sleeper. And when I was in GARP, I was a massive Sleeper fan, and just before the Prodigy thing, and so Sleeper became really big. I got the Prodigy thing, and then you see these things going around.
You're the luckiest fan in the world. You just do everything.
yeah. But I went to see Sleeper a few times, and then so John was talking about it, and at the end of the class, that particular one, I was like, mate, if you ever get Sleeper back together again, I'd love to play second guitar or keys or something, because I knew they had a few extra bodies on stage. And he goes, nah, it's never going to happen. He goes, well, sometimes I want to do it, sometimes Lou doesn't want to do it. And I was like, okay. But I planted the seed there, and I think that's what made them think of me when they were considering doing it. And they got to a point where I think they both were like, okay, let's do this. And then they said, do you want to play bass? I'm like, what? Okay. Because I've been a fan of the band, I thought it was going to be the original four of them, but it was like, because they're based in Brighton, Deed's in Bristol, and logistically, I think they wanted to keep it really simple. So I was like massively flattered, and at the same time as well, going, nice, Sleeper, easy, nice, easy Britpop songs. The bass lines are insane. Like Deed, the original bass player, genius. Some of the writing, I think it was between him and Stephen Street, the producer. Crafting these intricate bass lines that really supported these seemingly simple songs. Sometimes backing up the vocals with a harmonic bass line. Yeah, really cool. And they're friends of mine, so getting into that, when they decided to reform, which was 2017, it kind of all went from there. And we did an album with Stephen Street, so that was just like, it was here actually at Metway.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know if I mentioned it, we're at Metway. Metway is another kind of, for me, it's kind of hallowed ground in Brighton, because I was so into the levelers when I was a kid. When I was travelling out to Australia, the thing I took with me in sort of must have been mid-90s, it was just levelers. I was like, this is British culture all wrapped up in like a music, and here we are in their studio. You know, when I
Yeah.
first came here, probably 15, 20 years ago, I remember just being in awe.
Exactly the same for me, because when I was in Real TV, that was with a guy called Fraggle, and his band before that was Back to the Planet, so it was Back to the Planet and the Levelers, all part of that scene.
Yeah.
Yeah, so doing stuff here, you know, I've been here a few times, you know, before doing the Stephen Street stuff, working with Adam Freeland and some other people that had rooms at different times.
Yeah,
And so
always bumping into
come
people.
here and do the album with Toby May, who's our friend, who's a resident engineer here, and Stephen Street was like, just a real touch. So yeah, so I did. I've been doing the Sleeper Synth thing ever since, and
Yeah,
off
you just came back from tour.
I'm
not
just
long
about to go
ago?
on tour. Just did rehearsal yesterday.
Okay.
Off on tour, just the festival dates, and then we have our
I
own
mean, you
tour.
were away just a few weeks ago as well, weren't you?
Yeah, that's right. A few dates,
Been
and now it's
back into
starting to speed up now. Yeah,
Yeah, nice.
and then end of September there'll be a tour, headline tour. So,
Okay.
so that keeps me ticking in terms of the live fulfillment.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very cool.
And so then, tell us about these other side projects that you're doing. There's
Yeah.
one in particular I'm interested in, which is the Radiophonic Workshop.
Right, yeah, I will get to that in a bit.
Okay.
Yeah, that was actually before. Actually, we'll talk about it now.
Okay.
Before Sleeper opportunity came around, this was with the Radiophonic Workshop. It was 2013, and I was working for BIM, but in Bristol. Helped set that one up in 2008, and by the time I'd come to the time of working there back in Brighton, I'd been zipping all over the place. But I was working with a guy called Cliff Jones, who was the singer from Gay Dad, who was also managing the Radiophonic Workshop. Really strange kind of path that he's taken, but very, very cool. And he said, I'm going to get the guys together. We're going to do a live version of the Radiophonic Workshop with Paddy Kingsland and Mark Ayres and Peter Howell and Roger Lim. And would you like to be involved? And I'm like, yeah. And he's like, yeah, and Dick Mills, the original guy's into it. And so suddenly the 9-year-old me is back in front of the TV seeing Dick Mills' Radiophonic Workshop and him scraping, you know, rosin down the street.
Explain a bit more about the philosophy behind the Radiophonic Workshop?
Yeah, so for me, I mean, the Radiophonic Workshop were a bunch of guys and gentlemen and ladies from 1958 until 1998. I might have got that slightly wrong. I think that's around about the same time. It's about 40 years. And they were making sound initially for radio and then for TV. And the sound would be sound effects, Foley, and music. And they would be making these sounds by hook or by crook. And the most famous coupling of the Radiophonic Workshop and TV was Doctor Who. So they'd be making sounds for aliens, of things that have never existed or exist in the future, and what does that sound like? So they would be taking, if it was an alien that was a fleshy alien, like an organic alien, they would be using fleshy things and balloons filled with water and stuff like that. And then if it was digital, they'll be using synthesizers and oscillators, and this was even before synths. They were using oscillators and then getting a tone and putting it through some kind of other LFO, and then sampling. Well, not sampling. They would record it onto tape, and then they would speed that tape up and down for different pitch, and then they would re-record that, and then cut those bits of tape up and make sound, and often music from that. And so the Doctor Who theme comes from that. Anyone can check that out. How Delia Derbyshire did that with Dick Mills, the Ron Grainer soundtrack.
Emulating sounds that don't exist yet.
Yeah, so and so as a 9-year-old boy seeing Dick Mills, making the TARDIS sound by scraping a key down a piano wire, and all these other sounds he'd made. He was like saying, he showed me how to do a creaky door once when we were on tour. He goes, if you want to do a creaky door, you need a bit of resistance. So you get a bit of string, some rosin from a violin, and then crush the rosin up, put it in a paper bag, and then and you've got a door that's open.
Wow, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really cool. I
Well,
really
these
like
are-
that stuff.
Yeah. So they asked me to do play drums basically and percussion, and then it evolved into sampling and live samples, and then we would with Bob, who I work with, Bob Erland, who was in Real TV, who now I work with at Waterbear, which is the music college, which is now where I've landed and feel most at home. Bob has then helped bring loads of other elements in, and was originally the tech, but also overseeing stuff, and then bringing in samples and extra percussion. And when we were playing Blue Dot Festival, we had a whole table of things to sample, and we would invite
Oh,
the,
Blue
the,
Dot
the,
is one of
the
the
general
greatest
public.
festivals I think I've ever been to.
Yeah,
Been to a lot of festivals, but Blue Dot.
yeah.
Took my kids up there because it's I don't know which year it was that I went, but it was it's the
Jodrell Bank.
Jodrell Bank telescope. It's the largest telescope in either in the UK or
Yeah.
in Europe. And that year we were there. Brian Eno was projecting onto
The dish.
onto all sides of it with a never. It was like an art form that never showed the same thing twice, and you couldn't see it changing. You'd just be off having a good time. You'd see this enormous thing looking like tartan or something, and then 20 minutes later you turn around and it's completely morphed into something else.
Oh, brilliant.
And it was just fantastic. And then there were all these sections in the centre where I was taking the kids. There were like people from university with space rocks and talking about all, like the Large Hadron Collider. There was a model you could walk through.
Yeah, yeah.
All this sort of stuff. I just thought
Incredible.
this is what festivals should be like.
Yeah.
Like it was such a
Yeah, and we
Cool.
were totally immersed in that as well. So that particular
That'd be
festival,
perfect for
we
this.
had a table of stuff to sample, and the general public
people
would come
could
in
go and play it.
and they were playing
Amazing.
it, and then I would sample it and go around and sample people saying stuff, and then we put that into the set.
brilliant.
And then Peter Howell after would do like a DJ set of his music with the projections onto the satellite dish. We did some great shows with that format. We did the 50th anniversary of the moon landing at Goonhilly, and we played the British Library and all these kinds of different amazing spaces. It's been great, yeah.
And so there was something, because I wanted to talk about that because we were going to mention that we were also talking about making a library.
Oh yeah, so yeah, that was the last thing that we've done together, was at Maida Vale just before Hans Zimmer took over. Spitfire Audio approached us about doing a sound library, and so and Marquez helped bring all that together, and that was just like a total pleasure to be involved. I did a few shows, radio shows at Maida Vale for Radio 6 Music with the Radiophonic Workshop, but to be there in a really relaxed state of just all you need to do is hit things and sample things. They had the old original 1950s drum kit, which was Desmond Briscoe's, with I think some original skins on it, which they definitely got pitted.
You mentioned this,
Yeah, I was basically having to like hit things at different velocities, so you had all the different kind of timbre of hit. And then I make a junk kind of percussion. I used to do that live anyway, like backs of radiators that I'd bow with a violin bow, or suspension springs and pans, and a bicycle wheel going around and bouncing the sticks off it. And then all the old synths came out and all the old kind of oscillators and stuff like that. And so everybody had their own little station, and we were sampling stuff and jamming stuff. It was great. And then Spitfire Audio recorded everything. It was like a big, maybe 18-month project, I think it was. It's incredible. So now there's an app, a plugin you can have on any door. You can go through and you can play the sound. So I very quickly put something together for this, so you can hear some of the junkyard percussion. What we'll hear though first, if we're going to play, should we play that?
Which one's this one? This is the.
That's the
number 2 on the multiple.
No, it's number 3 on the thing. So is that going to get in the way?
No, because I wrote down the time somewhere, didn't I?
Oh, did you? Amazing.
I did.
That's like proper DJ behaviour.
Eggs hatch out.
That's
the one?
no, that's
no.
that's the Wargasm
Junk
one.
quote, sorry, there we go. Yes.
Yeah.
I've got it here, so 2.
Check you out. So we might have to go back to number 2. So I do apologise for.
Is it going to let me drag? I don't know if it is. Let me just. Turn dust down. So then I drag this to 2. Okay, here we go.
It's loads of fun.
Yeah, that's super cool.
And we made those kind of sounds as well. We got a commission to do a soundtrack for a short horror film, or like a dark suspense film. called Possum, and so my side of things were very much those kind of sounds. And Peter Howe there's a creature within Possum that's like very scary, and he was making the creepy noises with a hairbrush and stuff like that. So yeah, lots of fun.
Because that also made me think, because we've been talking about, we're obviously one of the things that we're sort of announcing at the moment is the KP Loops library, which we're going to be inscribing on Bitcoin with Trio. But then that also, you've also been working towards a kind of base library, and then I was saying we should do something like this as well. We should actually create some sort of found sounds. I mean, we're building the foundational elements here, but it'd be amazing to have just to go through that, to kind of go through the process.
I'm so up for that, and I think I've got quite a few friends within my inner circle that would be happy to contribute to that and build
brilliant.
it. Yeah.
You can go to, I don't know how to put the URL here, but if you go to ordinals.com /BAM/ well, if you go to BAM and then you choose the libraries, you can find KP Loops. You should go and have a look at it. In fact, I'll show you here, just to show you quickly the page that we've built, just to show off what they look like, because it's super cool, and you can actually have a play with these samples. See if I can actually play it here. So you go to KP Loops, and then on the page, there we go. The same one. Let's see. Yeah, that's no, it's not playing. Ah, good. No, no. What am I doing wrong here? Well, that doesn't seem to be working for some reason.
It's really funny seeing it all like this. It reminds me of when I started doing loops for other people. I was working with like a thing called Nano Studio, which was an app, and very similar thing where you'd get the beats coming up. But this is great.
I should be able to play here, but I don't know why it's not. Doesn't seem to be. Oh, I see. It's probably down there, isn't it? That's me being silly. No, it's not. Okay, I don't know why that's not working, but if you go and have a play on KP Loops, you can actually sample all the different samples here. I don't think it's even showing the page. It's somehow disconnected there, but you can see a lot of the samples are there. You can play with them. There's actually a quantize button, so you can have a little jam on there. But these are all the actual loops that will be in Opus encoded, inscribed on chain, and then you'll be able to use them in the sequencer to create new songs ultimately. Anyway, I'm just going to leave that because I can't play with it right now. So we'll go back.
All good. You're doing so many amazing things all at once.
I'm shy. So go and check out anyway. Check out the KP Loops on there and have a little play with them. Yeah, I mean, I think that's kind of taking us through to talking about the.
Well, getting involved with this, I suppose, because when we met, finally, I mean, because obviously our paths have crossed in different ways. And we were introduced by a mutual friend of ours, and he was like, "I got to meet Jim," and then it's like, you're the dude.
It's definitely one of those things which is like, multiple kind of roads coming together in a symbiotic way. Because it's like what was that book? I think it was called The Secret, something that came out years and years ago, and they were talking about how you look for these moments. Often when you connect with someone, it's because you're looking for something they have to give, they're looking for something you have to give, you know, and it's like it very much felt like that when we finally met. It's like, look, there's so much symbiosis here in like what we're both looking to achieve,
especially the thinking behind why you're doing it, and you want to help people own their music and feel and regain the worth, you know, and for other people to sort of feel that even if they contribute just a little bit to something, that it'll be recognised. I think that's just genius, and that whole spiel when you told it to me. I mean, the first time you told me about the whole thing, it blew my mind right open. I said, "Well, I'd have to soak some of this in, and then we'll have to have a chat." We met here, didn't we? Went through everything, and so I find I've got a lot of people like that in my life, and so to meeting you was just like another one of those. And because it feels really fresh and different and really needed as well.
It's meaningful.
It's meaningful.
I can't put it down because it just feels so important.
Do you know what it was? And while this when this came about, and being involved with Water Bear as well, they have a philosophy, particularly with them when they're doing the masters, is this thing called ikigai. Do you know about this? So Japanese concept of basically you draw 4 circles like a Venn diagram which intersects in the middle. I might get this wrong, but it's basically what makes you happy, what do you want to do that's going to change the world, what's going to evolve you, and and what's for the common good or the greater good. And then suddenly in the middle you've got where it all overlaps, this thing that you can really concentrate on. And for me, this was just like, I've done lots of different things, play many instruments but master of none, meet lots of people, I've done lots of projects but never fully got into fruition, but there's been great things going from it. But I'm always looking for the next thing, and every time I've looked for the next thing, then suddenly the things behind that never got finished that get joined up. Do you know what I mean? In some kind of really weird timeline, skewing off and then coming back again, And so this for me was another one of those moments where I get introduced to someone that has been part of my history anyway, through Zoe, my wife, and then through the college, that I work from, and then suddenly there's this opportunity, because at college you're teaching stuff that's in the industry that people are doing at the moment or have done in the last 5 years. Obviously the industry changes and you've got to keep up with that. But if we're working on something that's completely fresh, and it can change the way, and it can add value to music and to people's experience, and while this is developing, we can tell people about this developing, and we can bring people in. And that for me, as an educator more than anything else, is exciting.
This appealed to me with meeting you as well, is just that passion for education, because that is something that I feel more and more as I get older, that it just feels so meaningful, that as well, that being able to pass it on to the next generation, but pass it on so they have a better experience than some of us
do,
for sure. Because it's an opportunity to make something better that needs to be fixed. And so just going through this it this way and inspiring young people just feels so exciting, especially with this new technology, with the idea that I can go and show them something that's totally new, but also something that's new and that's there to help them, that's there to make things easier
and have fun and make music on the way.
And be creative.
Totally.
And don't be creative on the road to disappointment.
So to talk about some of those beats as well, and the way that I make music, which you probably have heard from some of the sounds and the tracks being played, I like to mix and match all the time. I'll put drum loops through amps and re-record it and stuff like that, and put bass. We were talking about having a bass guitar signal and a synth signal left and right, or merging them somehow, doing something fresh and different. So the sounds that you'll hear within the loops, they're quite trashy and raw. And when I was saying before about sampling, whether that be through my old National Panasonic desk, or whether it's from my phone, but my phone is probably my biggest tool of recording sounds and manipulating them, or having the idea and then taking that further. Innovation.
My train of thought was derailed then. I had a question for you and then it went on the notes there. I can't even read the bottom about that bit, so it seems to be overlapping. It was something else about teaching, I thought.
Or how I got into teaching, or how it's evolved, or
what do you think's next in terms of like the next level of getting students prepared to move into this industry that seems in flux right now?
What, into this particular
music
in general? It's a real hard one. Firstly, I've gone full circle with everything, and the most basic advice I give people now, which seems really kind of generic and a bit kind of, really, it's just, you got to have fun first and foremost. You've got to be able to trust people and work with people. If you're going to collaborate with someone, you've got to be able to have fun with them, and it's got to be flow and easy and honest. And sussing that and quickly is vital. Then working out the parameters in which you're working, the equipment that you're working, the new technology that you're working with, getting a good understanding with, or dovetailing your experience with someone else who does understand it. Like for us working on this together, the coding behind it just blows my mind, But what you're setting up, I understand the concept. You understand how I work, and then therefore we're having fun. We work together very well, And I'll bring some other people in that can dovetail with that. We'll bring another skill set that will add to it. So I think if people want to get into the industry, it's like do as much as you can yourself. Know when you can't do the stuff to the level that you really know it should be, and then you bring other people in that can help do that for you and with you. So it's hard. It's going to get harder with your AI creating songs left, right, and centre. Things being done for you, but if you stick to what you really enjoy and have fun with that, then it can't go wrong for yourself in terms of a personal journey. When I'm working with artists, or songwriters, or bands, or anyone that's trying to aspire to be like their heroes, then if they're trying to make the same music that's out at the moment, then they're always going to be 6 months behind. So I always say, well, what really makes you who you are? And we go back to the music that was being played when they were 5, when they were 10, when they were 15, and there'll be some ingredients in there that they were like, oh, it's a bit embarrassing, but I really like that Wannabe track by the Spice Girls. And like, okay, right, so there's a rhythm, there's a tempo, there's a cool compressed piano in there, there's some elements in there that if you want to create a song and you need some inspiration, you can draw from that. I'm also into Billy Joel, or I'm into Elton John, or I'm into ABBA, or I'm into Fugazi, or I'm into the Cocteau Twins, and then suddenly you've got all these really weird random elements that will make some fresh music from yourself and then with other people.
So there was one question that someone brought up. I know that it's not your specialist subject, but I thought I'd ask. It's from Peace Love Music, who's another great creator in the space, does an amazing podcast himself. He's saying, what do you think needs to develop to help facilitate broader adoption of on-chain music?
Well, the space is like what you're creating, the environment and the understanding, and education, and getting people to, when they're ready for it, well, when you're ready for it, when you're ready to sort of beta test stuff, or to show how the beats work, to invite people in, and for them to understand that, and to then share that, so it's a network, isn't it? It's people to get excited about it, and to know that it's a creative space and they can have fun.
And this is partly why it's so exciting having you here, because I know it's going to inspire more people to just kind of pay attention.
Yeah, and see how it works for them.
Yeah,
and how it can enhance their library or their experience or their network, or Yeah. So it's all to play for, really. Yeah.
Cool, man. Well, look, I'm going to wrap it up. Thank you so much for coming along.
It's
been
a total pleasure.
I can't wait to do more of this stuff with you. I know everyone in the ordinal space is very excited to kind of see where this leads. It's going to bring lots.
If anybody wants to get in touch about any of the stuff, especially if it's like, any questions at all, they can get in contact with me through for the Water Bear. Shall I give that out?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
It's just like literally, it's just.
I can post it on the link.
Okay. Yeah. It's Kieran@waterbear.org.uk.
Okay.
If you're interested in any of the stuff, then I'm happy to answer questions and chat further.
Brilliant. And so just to finish it off, I haven't really mentioned anything, but this other collection that's coming out, which is going to be, effectively, it's kind of like a passport to the BAM libraries, called Audionauts. I have kind of teased some little bits out about it. And I'll close just by showing their lovely art forms. There's going to be 888 of them. They all have a lovely kind of journey as they slowly reveal the Ordinals logo with the Opus of Efficiency song that I created in order to really just to celebrate this technological advance of us using Opus encoding to reduce the cost of inscribing audio on chain. So I'll close out just by showing one of these Opus videos, which I think I put on here. Maybe I didn't. Maybe I just showed you. Let's have a look. Bear with me for a second. I'll just try and load one of them up. and see you all for the next one. There we go.
A distant sine wave floats like dawn fog. Soft clicks imitate blockchain heartbeats at rest. Opus's economy gressed as elegance, shrinking the cosmos into pocket-sized constellations. 10,000 kilobytes shed their weight, glide into the ledger on carbon light wings. Compression is compassion, freeing space so more voices fit the auditorium. Efficiency is ethics. Why waste bytes when bytes are forever? In BAM, each decibel carries dual citizenship. Artistic and archival, creative and cryptographic. The codex signs a peace treaty between fidelity and frugality, both winning, neither conceding ground. My diction. Close your eyes, hear the details still intact. Symbol wash like sea spray, synth harmonics glinting off the e-depth cliffs. Opus encoded, your lullaby can cross oceans offline, bounce between satellites and rural nodes, yet unpack as high-res comfort in a lonely headset. The future is lightweight, sound traveling at the speed of confirmation. In this economy of resonance, your quietest idea spends nothing but earns eternity. Opus of efficiency, let your whisper linger. The chain records, the world exhales. Space saved for the next dreamer.